Hey everyone, Barry here at the XTS Custom Shop. We want to show you something very cool today. It's this, the MIDI adapter. We call it the M2S MIDI Adapter. That stands for MIDI to switch. And we think it's going to change the game when it comes to making small MIDI controlled boards. And hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a sense how you can use it to do something similar to this, something different than this, but nevertheless awesome with your guitar rig. So what does this little guy do? So it takes MIDI commands from any capable controller. There's lots of them out there, right? There's Voodoo Lab, there's RJM, there's Morningstar here, there's several, Disaster Area makes a bunch of controllers. Lots of great stuff out there. Today we're showing you this MC6, and what it does is it takes MIDI commands out of the MIDI out from this guy into the MIDI in here, and it translates them into 6 contact closures. Now you might be saying, Barry, what's a contact closure? Well, it's just a switch. So the contacts is, it's open, contact closed, and these are isolated, meaning that on all these tip sleeve 1/8 inch jacks here, none of the grounds touch one another, which means you can run these to a bunch of different pedals. You can run them to an amp. You can run it to an amp and pedals, multiple amps, and there won't be any ground paths to make ground loops or do any gremlin-y type things. So in this scenario, we've got ports 1, 2, 3, and 4 running these 4 pedals, and port 6 here is plugged into the tap of the Deluxe Memory Man, and none of these pedals are aware of the other pedals in terms of these remote circuits or the sleeve of this tap touching one another. And so that may or may not be an issue in your rig, but it certainly could be, and so we wanted to make sure that it never would be in practice. So what are you going to do with this? So you've got these 6 switches, and you have the ability to turn them on or turn them off. What kinds of things can you do with it? So like we said, you can do amp switching, the JHS Red Remote, the Sir Effects Link stuff, tap tempos, like this guy right here, and I'll show you that real quick. So this button here on this MC6 is set up to send CCs, control change messages, from the Morningstar to the M2S MIDI adapter, and what you're going to see is I press this, it's going to toggle port 6 there. And so if I go tap, 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 you can see that guy flashing right there, and now that you can see that this beat is now tapping at the rate that I tapped it. So flashy, flashy, tappy, tappy, the Deluxe Memory Man is now doing what I wanted to do. So if this was remoted or someplace on the board where you couldn't really get to it, the DMM tap here button would take care of that. So all this guy is doing is translating, churning a CC command into a switch closure. So that's cool. You can tap this now, and this MIDI gets changed into a switch, and the switch gets handled by the delay, which turns it into tap tempo. And that's all cool. But it's really just kind of the start of what you can do to it. So there's more that we can do on top of that. So first, a little context. Here's kind of a history lesson. Let me grab this over here. So this is big, and it's a MIDI controller. So you can see here how this thing's kind of set up. Each one of these guys is sort of set up as a preset, and then each one of these buttons is a pedal, and for this case this was actually Paul Jackson Jr.'s, so thank you, Paul, for your help in this demo. I got presets. I press that button, that sends me to a preset, and if I want to add the atomic to it, I can press that and turn it on. So that's a lot of buttons, right? So you need as many buttons as you want presets for, and on top of that you kind of want to have all the buttons that you want instant access for. Now that made really good sense with and still does, with rack-based rigs, because all those pedals are going to be way behind you, and you're not going to be able to step on the pedal. So if you want to be able to add boost to a preset that you've already got cooking, you want to be able to have that button to be able to stomp on it on your MIDI controller, so that the loop switcher knows, well, I want to turn on my shape charger. So, that's a great setup for that. And these smaller controllers can do that sort of thing too, but because they have less buttons, what you're going to find yourself doing is sort of paging around. So I'll go to another bank here, and maybe that'll have some instant access buttons, or maybe I set this up one bank for a certain song that's got 3 presets, and then it's got 3 instant access buttons for the things that I like to kick on for that particular song. But what you wind up doing is splitting the functionality of this controller from, it's not all presets. Some of them have to do some instant accessy sort of things, for lack of a better phrase. So the cool thing about this setup is each pedal is its own instant access. So all of these pedals have the XTS remote system in them. So you can see here, we put an 1/8 inch jack there. All you Boss connoisseurs know that shouldn't be there, or it wasn't there from the factory. It should be there now. So we put an 1/8 inch jack on there, and now we can remote control this pedal. And in addition to that, its control still works. So we can turn it on or off with the pedal, or we can turn it on or off by sending a MIDI command to the M2S adapter. So some of you guys are like, oh, I get this. I know exactly what I'd use that for and all this, and God bless you. We're gonna break this down for folks who maybe aren't as hip to the MIDI thing, because we think this makes it simple enough that folks who never thought that they'd have a presettable rig, because it can be kind of a straitjacket, because you got to decide what you're going to use, and everything's kind of locked in. Those guys may in the past have not wanted to do a MIDI system, and but this is, I think we're going to show that it's actually pretty darn useful and pretty darn easy. So each of these, so like I said, each one of these buttons still toggles the pedal. So each one of these works just as you expect it. If I turn it on or turn it off, it does. The pedal turns on or turns off. But now, because of this MIDI adapter, I have the ability to send presets. So I just pressed the clean button here. It turned on this port, refreshed this port, and so now the King of Tone turned on. I can go to my crunch. You see the King of Tone turned off. The blues driver turned on. So there's no audio going through here. All it's doing is switching these guys. We've modified these pedals with our remote switching system. This pedal has the remote switching system in its stock. All we need to do is add the 1/8 inch remote control jack to it, and you're in business with that. So I can turn this on, and it still works as it should. I can go to my lead patch here. You can see now these are both on. So now, what I think is the coolest bit of this is if I'm playing the lead thing, or my heavy rhythm, whatever you want to call it, and I decide I want to kind of go to the next level and turn on the shape charger, the way it kind of used to work and does work, I've used all these for presets. I'd have to bank up to sort of my instant access bank and then turn on the button for the shape charger. Well, now, because each button is its own instant access thing, I just turn it on. And now I'm melting faces with the shape charger. And now the other very cool thing about this, if I just want to go back to my crunch setting, I press crunch and everything turns off. And when I go back to lead, the shape charger isn't in that preset, so just because I had it on the last time I was in lead doesn't mean that it's still on. So now you have that sort of carte blanche control that you have on a rig that doesn't have a MIDI controlled looper in it, because all these things act like just dumb pedals. But I also have the ability, because these are modified and because this came with its stock, just needs a control jack put on it. Now I have the ability to send these guys commands via the M2S MIDI adapter to do exactly what I want it to do. And then clearly the HX stomp is MIDIable. The adapter has a MIDI through, and that MIDI through is coming out over here to the HX stomp, and you can see that it's changing patches as we go through. And the Deluxe Memory Man is in the send and return loop of this, so you have control of whether it's on or off depending on what you have selected. So everything here is now MIDI controllable, but you still have full control as well. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds, I should say. And you can do whatever you want with the pedals, and then you can also add presets on top of that. So with this pedal, you got all of the power of a MIDI configurable rig. Each of these pedals can still be controlled remotely. There's no need for a separate looper box that's handling the audio and bypassing these things, because now each one of them is controlled locally. And you can use a smaller controller, because all I have to do, I can just make sure these are all preset-y things. And like we showed you before, this is set up for a tap, and then this button has Eric set up this button to do this cool drone thing, which we'll show you here in a second. But you're not burning buttons to be able to turn these things on and off, because that's what those buttons are for. So you can imagine, like this isn't one of our rig builds. For those of you who are familiar with our rig building, typically it's a little bit cleaner than this, but you can imagine how small this setup would be, and the amount of power that it has too. So if you kind of went overdub crazy on your record and you need to cover a bunch of sounds, now you can do that with a board that you can still fly. And if you're covering a bunch of songs, or covering a bunch of sounds even, whether it be, you know, in a club or in your church or whatever, you can do that too. And it's, you know, maybe this Deluxe Memory Man is redundant for you, and maybe it's just an HX stomp, some dirt pedals, this controller, the HX stomps on top of the power supply, and we hide the MIDI adapter someplace. This is a super small rig. You throw it in your lunchbox, take it to school, impress all the other children, and you know, you're really got a powerful setup here and a very small footprint. All right, so we're going to bring Eric in here, and he's going to play some guitar, show you how this works in practice. So we hope this setup inspires you. We can't wait to use this M2S MIDI adapter in a rig build for you, or even to see how you use it in your own builds. Thanks, guys. Where's catering?
Hi there, this is Eric, also at XTS here. Barry has explained how our new device here works really well, so we thought it'd be great to just show it in action a little bit. So kind of the beauty of a program switcher like this, where you can just set up your different sounds, is to go from one really different sound to another really different sound. And I can't think of a better song than one by Mr. Huey Lewis and his News to showcase sort of really disparate guitar sounds going back and forth. So let's go to our crunchier sound here. Got the blues driver on, nobody else here. So this is going to be great for our intro. So that's great. Now in the song, you go from that big sound to a really clean, spanky thing, some compression and whatnot. So as opposed to having to hit this, hit a different thing over here, maybe turn this off, we can just hit one button. MIDI switcher is going to turn this off. We're going to get the cleaner side of the King of Tone on. I'm going to switch a patch over here. So great. I only had to hit one button. I've switched all these good things. Regular pedals. So we can go back to our crunch sound then for our chorus. So that's great, really good. And I still have access to all these if I want them. If I want to do a little flourish, like there's a part in the thing where he gives a little stab, a little bit of a. I could hit this if I wanted to for that. Pop out a little bit, and then I can either turn it off instantly there, or I can just hit my clean patch again, and it goes right back to it. So super useful. Let's say we want to coming off of this again. Time for some bridge work, I think. You know, you gotta get away from your chorus and your verse sometimes. So let's go back to our clean, and for that one, let's say, yeah, maybe I want a little bit of chorus on that one. And that's great, because that's a really good chorus, and it's really different, again, from all the other sounds. And I could easily turn that on if I wanted to. Or off, or whatever I want to do. And then we go to the best part of the song, which is the solo. And let's say we needed maybe a little more power to do that part. I don't know. We could go to our lead over here. And that's just a really fun part there. But let's say I'm in a club playing this awesome song, and maybe I need a little bit more power. I can easily turn that on whenever I want. And then I go right back off. So hopefully this just shows power of this, and you can combine it with pedals that you love, whatever you want to do really. So we'll just play out here with a little something fun.